Welcome to the Knowledge Seeker channel. The channel is dedicated to exploring critical issues in the world. The presentation today is titled Orukarism and the Spirituality of Ijaw Culture. As stated in the presentation titled Orukarism, the religion of the Ijaw people of the Niger Delta. Ijaw culture is very spiritual due to the influence of the Orukari religion. It is one of the most ancient religions whose foundation could be traced to Kemet, which is Egypt. This means that Orukarism, like the Egyptian religion, served as one of the pillars for the development of Christianity and other religions. The religion is so sacred that absolute truth, sincerity, honesty, and morality are necessary because it is associated with the supreme intelligence. There is no room for hypocrisy. Now, what is spirituality? Spirituality can be defined as a cultural or religious beliefs about God or a higher authority and the related esoteric concepts of the soul or spirit and the need to be in conformity or harmony with divine authority. Thus, spirituality focuses on the non-physical, intangible, immaterial, formless, and mystical aspects of the universe and creation. It requires maintaining a balance between the physical and non-physical worlds so that the individual can achieve attunement with the divine being or supreme intelligence or universal consciousness that is the source of all things. Being in one with God or supreme authority or divine being requires self-discipline and upholding of spiritual and or sacred rules, which are sometimes referred to as commandments. It is strongly believed that only those who have self-control, humble, honest, truthful, selfless, and upholds the rules that can develop the qualities of being in one with the supreme intelligence or supreme authority and or with the universal consciousness. Thus, in Orukarism, it is not necessary to read a book as in Buddhism, Christianity, Islam, and Judaism to know God or be one with God. God or the supreme intelligence manifests to those who are attuned to the universal consciousness and are spiritually clean. This is why in Ijaw land, people are told not to engage in sinful or abominable acts. It is also responsible for the reason Ijaw people are advised never to engage in ungodly acts. Hence, Ijaws do not tolerate falsehood, lying, arrogance, deceitfulness, greediness, and self-centeredness. There are many Ijaws who strongly believe that it is time to get rid of Orukarism. Why? They believe that it is an idol-worshipping and satanic religion that leads to godly damnation. There are also those Ijaws who believe that Orukarism is an archaic, superstitious religion that has no place in modern society where science and technology reign. Such people further believe that the Ijaws must throw away the primitive garbage and embrace modernism. Now, in response to that, the question becomes, can a tree survive without its roots? Those who strongly believe that it is time for the Ijaws to throw away their religion ignores a major facet of nature. Telling the Ijaws to throw away their indigenous religion is comparable to saying that a tree can survive without its roots. Indeed, no tree can survive without its roots, which provide the source of its existence, foundation for its regeneration, and the strength for growth. For the Ijaws, the ancestors are the sources of their existence, the providers of the culture, religion, and the ways of life. Orukarism provides the ethics, morality, and the process for connecting with the ancestors and the supreme intelligence or divine being. It also provides the parameters of the culture which helps to explain the reason for existence and the ways to live righteously. Therefore, cutting away Orukarism is like cutting away the roots that provide existence for the Ijaw nation. In other words, the Ijaws cannot destroy the source of their existence and still claim to be Ijaw. Just as a tree cannot stand or exist without its roots, so a society cannot stand and exist without its ancestors. It is the ancestors that laid the foundation for the society, culture, and religion that go with the society. This is why every ethnic and tribal group in the world has a culture and religion that goes with the culture. Since there are thousands of ethnic and tribal groups in the world, there are also thousands of cultures and religions in the world. Generally, people are expected to worship religions that are connected to their cultures. It should be noted that most of the globalized religions were spread through conquest and colonization. As a result, many people in the world adopt foreign religions and avoid religions that are connected to their cultures and ethnic and tribal groups. When people avoid their indigenous cultures and religions and embrace foreign religions, they sacrifice their indigenous culture and society and end up worshipping religions that originate from other societies. Apart from that, they become cultureless, confused, aimless, and self-destructive because they do not have a direction. As can be seen, due to cultural confusion and aimlessness, an increasing number of Ijaws are engaging in destructive behaviors that are causing tremendous pain in Ijaw society today. Hence, individualism, uncontrollable jealousy, hatred, political violence, thuggery, cult wars, greediness leading to massive embezzlement of public funds by public officials, and deceitfulness have become part of the Ijaw culture in the name of modernity. Additionally, the gap between the rich and the poor is getting wider as people abandon Ijaw spiritual culture and become materialistic. It is increasingly me, me, and me. The Europeans who brought Christianity to Ijaw land know that a tree cannot survive without its roots. Consequently, they continue to pay homage to their ancestors by naming the months and days of the week after their ancestral deities. Let's look at the days of the week. Sunday is named after the god of the sun or day of the sun. Monday is named after the god of the moon or day of the moon. Tuesday is named after the god Tew, a god of war, which the Latin people refer to as Mars. Wednesday is named after Woden, which is Mercury in Latin. Thursday is named after the god of thunder, which in Latin is known as Jupiter or Thor in Anglo-Saxon culture. Friday is named after a female deity, Frigg, which in Latin is Venus, god of love. Saturday is named after Saturn, the Roman god of time, agriculture, and so forth. Take note, the names originated from Latin due to Roman influence. The Germanic Anglo-Saxons matched the names of the Roman deities with their own deities. The Romans were influenced by the Greeks, and the Greeks were influenced by the Egyptians. The Anglo-Saxons took the names to Britain, and the English adopted the names. Now, let's look at the commandments or the laws in Ijaw culture. Ijaw religious commandments or laws which serve as the do's and don'ts of Ijaw culture seem to have originated from the 42 declarations of innocence or admonitions, or 42 laws of Maat. These declarations originated from the virtues of Maat, the Egyptian religious tradition, which seems to serve as the moral basis for many religions in the world. The virtues include truth, justice, harmony, balance, order, reciprocity, and propriety. Again, this is the symbol for Maat, and you can see the 7 principles. In the Egyptian tradition, Maat is the process of determining whether a deceased person was godly or not by symbolically weighing the heart against the weight of the feather, which represents the principles of truth and righteousness. Thus, Maat was used to set the tenets of the religion and also determine whether a deceased was a godly or a sinful person when he or she was alive. To be considered godly or spiritually clean, the weight of the person's heart must balance with the weight of the feather or less than the feather. As indicated earlier, Orukarism seems to have been influenced by the 42 declarations. As a result, in Ijaw culture, the virtues of truth, justice, harmony, balance, order, reciprocity, propriety, and probably morality are very important. This ties in with the Ijaw desire for truth, justice, harmony, honesty, fairness, reciprocity, and humility. Hence, in some parts of Ijaw land, when a person dies, divination, that is Ububabi, is conducted to determine whether the person was spiritually clean or not. Those considered spiritually unclean are not buried in normal cemeteries. Some scholars believe that the 10 Commandments of the Bible are an abbreviated form of the 42 declarations. Likewise, some scholars tend to attribute the 10 Commandments to Pharaoh Akhenaten, who was forced out of Egypt for introducing one God, that is polytheism, and not Moses. Thus, Ijaw commandments and or laws can be broken into two categories. A. The sacred laws or commandments or abominations or taboos, and B. Ordinary laws. These are like the secular laws. So let's look at A. A. Sacred laws or commandments are theocratic in nature. They are very serious, hence if anyone violates them, the individual must confess and do atonement. Why? Because a violation of a sacred law is tantamount to committing sacrilege or abomination. It is strongly believed that anyone who commits abomination must confess or face the karmic consequences when the ancestors, ancestral deities, and the supreme God react. Generally, they react in about 3-4 different ways. 1. It could lead to perpetual bad luck against the person and members of the person's family. 2. It could lead to an incurable disease until confession is rendered. 3. It could lead to madness until confession is rendered. And 4. It could even lead to death for the person and members of the person's family until confession is rendered. Now let's look at the Ijaw commandments. 1. There is one supreme God, that is Tamara Woyinge Ayiba Zibara Tamuno and so forth. 2. Thou shalt not invoke the ancestors, gods and goddesses and God in false pretense or while lying. 3. Thou shalt not kill. If you happen to kill, you must do penance by engaging in a soul cleansing ritual to clean yourself of the blood of the person killed. Thus, self-defense should be the basis for killing a person. 4. Thou shalt always be truthful and honest. 5. Thou shalt not engage in evil deeds. 6. Thou shalt not engage in sorcery. 7. Thou shalt not engage in incest. 8. Thou shalt not engage in prescribed behaviors. There are many kinds, including sex and other things. 9. Thou shalt not steal. 10. Thou shalt not lie or bear false witness. 11. Thou shalt not be deceitful or dishonest or fraudulent. 12. Thou shalt not eat certain meat or fish or food, depending on the sub-ethnic group or clan. 13. Thou shalt not join or participate in organizations that engage in malevolent or evil acts. This means that an Ijaw person cannot engage in money rituals, join violent cults, and engage in acts intended to kill or deprive people of life in order to gain power or advantage in society. 14. Thou shalt respect and honor sacred days. 15. Thou shalt confess and do atonement if a sin or abomination is committed. 18. Thou shalt respect and obey thy elders. 19. Thou shalt not violate the purity of sacred places or things or participate in events while being in a state of spiritual impurity. 20. Thou shalt not marry thy relative. Each sub-ethnic group determines the extent of familial closeness for marriage. So if you are Kalabari, you check the Kalabari requirement. If you are Kolokuma, you check the Kolokuma requirement. If you are Akasa, you check the Akasa requirement. Like that. 21. Every Ijaw person must be buried in the land of his or her ancestors. If an Ijaw person is buried outside the land of his or her ancestors, some body parts like hair, nails must be taken home for reburial. Note, these are only a few of the rules or laws. Brother Benabi Benatare knows the full range of the sacred laws or commandments or taboos in Ijaw land. Apart from these commandments, it should be noted that each sub-ethnic group or clan also has special rules that must be adhered to. So every Ijaw person, apart from following the general spiritual rules, you must also adhere to the special spiritual rules in your clan or sub-ethnic group. For instance, 1. In Nembe, it is an abomination to commercialize periwinkle. 2. In Odoni, the iguana or monitor lizard cannot be killed or consumed. 3. In many Ijaw communities, the paddle cannot be pinned on the ground. 4. In Kalabari land, those who died of suicide, leprosy, hernia rupture, dropsy, lunacy, abortion, died with pregnancy, and sorcerers are not buried in the land. 5. In Boni, Nembe, Bile, Ke, and many Ijaw communities, the python or boa constrictor, that is Adamu or Odum, is a sacred animal and cannot be killed. The reason is that it represents or is the symbol of the Supreme Creator because it is associated with Adamu or Odumu. To a certain extent, the Adamu or Odumu is equated with Woyingi, Tamarau, Tamarau, Tamuno, Ayiba, Ziba, Zibarau, and so forth. This is why in Boni, Adamu is referred to as Upu Adamu. Now, let's look at the ordinary laws. B. Ordinary laws. Apart from the sacred commandments or laws, the Ijaws also have ordinary laws that are often referred to as customary laws by the colonial authorities during the colonial era. These laws deal with crimes that do not have spiritual implications, like the commandments or the abominations. However, some of these laws can be sanctified to become sacred laws if the ancestors and deities are invoked. So even though you have the ordinary laws, some of the ordinary laws can be sanctified through the invocation of the ancestors and deities. For instance, if someone is accused of stealing and the person denies, the individual can be summoned to swear in the name of his or her ancestors or deities to determine the absolute truth. You see, so under that circumstances, an ordinary law will become a sacred act because of the swearing in. Now, let's look at religious priests and priestesses in Ijaw land. In Orukarism, both men and women serve as religious priests and priestesses, unlike in the Abrahamic religions, that is Christianity, Islam, Judaism, and Buddhism, where men dominate. In Ijaw land, both men and women play active roles in the religion. Unlike in Buddhism, Christianity, Islam, and Judaism, where individuals can choose to attend religious schools and become monks and priests, in Orukarism, the priests and priestesses are chosen by the godly entities based on the purity of their hearts. When a person has been chosen, the individual will develop a third eye and begins to see into the future and experience miraculous events and things. Ijaw religious priests and priestesses play many roles, including being shamans, herbalists, spiritualists, prophets, prophetesses, psychologists, and advisors. Some of them can see into the past, present, and the future. They can access the Akashic record, which is a kind of a globalized spiritual library or Google that contains information about the past, present, and the future about every individual, events, and the universe. They can also communicate with other entities and obtain critical information. Now, let's look at some miraculous and spiritual events in Ijaw land. 1. In Ijaw spirituality, the number 7 is very important, and there are many ways to look at it. A. The 7 spiritual kingdoms that must be traversed to reach the abode of the supreme intelligence or God. Thus, it is arduous for anyone to become godly. B. The Kalabari deity Awo Mekaso had to subdue 7 Wara people who appeared as pythons and dwelled in a well to kill people in order to become the ruler of Kalabari land. 2. Founding ancestor descending from heaven. The people of Ke Kingdom believe that their 7 founding ancestors descended from the sky. 3. Ancestors ascending onto the sky. There is a miraculous story concerning some Ijaw ancestors in the Egbesu area or probably around Agadagba Bo. It was believed that there was a time when the rulers were about to pass away or passed away. Instead of being buried on the ground, they will ascend onto the sky through a craft or an instrument. This story is similar to the stories in the Bible in which some beings descended from heaven and others ascended onto heaven or to the sky. So Ijaw land also contains stories about beings coming down from the heavens or from the sky and beings or human beings ascending to the sky from the ground. For instance, in King 2, paragraph 211, a chariot of fire descended and took Elijah to heaven. In Ezekiel 10, paragraph 1 to 22, Prophet Ezekiel is reported to have met beings who descended from the sky on a chariot. So you can see the biblical stories are similar to the Ijaw stories of beings coming down and people ascending. 4. The cowries at Agadagba Bo. One story about Ujo, the legendary collective founding ancestor of the Ijaw nation, is that before he arrived in the central delta region, he was told to set up a settlement in a place where he would find cowries and a crown. Thus, when he got to Agadagba Bo, he found the cowries and a crown. As a result, he set up his settlement at Agadagba Bo. 5. The Egbesu phenomenon. The Egbesu could be considered as the component of God or messenger of God and plays a role similar to St. Michael in Christianity, Islam, and Judaism. Hence, the deity is responsible for enforcing godly rules dealing with peace, justice, and war. The deity can also be viewed as one of the guardians of the universe to enforce God's laws. It is one of the national deities of the Ijaw nation, very, very sacred. The Ijaws tend to view Egbesu as a special gift from God to them. Hence, only the Ijaws can be initiated to the Egbesu lodge or temple. Non-Ijaws must have special permission to do so. It can only be invoked by those who are pure in spirit or clean-hearted. There are some Ijaws who believe that if an injustice has been committed against you, you can invoke Egbesu to act on your behalf because justice is one of his responsibilities. The Ijaws initiate themselves into the Egbesu and other religious deities during war for protection and to fight wars. Egbesu can only be invoked to fight a defensive war to stop aggression. 6. Sacred masquerades and dances. There are many sacred masquerades and dances in Ijaw land which are connected to the deities. Such masquerades have spiritual powers. As a result, before they are performed, spiritual cleansing is necessary for the initiates. Spiritual possession, that is trance, is quite common for those who carry these spiritually powerful masquerades or participate in certain dances. In the past, when some of these sacred masquerades were being performed, the sick would go to the dance ground and have the masquerades bless and possibly cure them of their maladies. Now, let's look at some of these masquerades. A. The Shak or Formal masquerade in Nembe and possibly Gbile is very powerful. Very, very powerful masquerade. B. The Olorogun masquerade in Ayakoromo too is powerful and involves spiritual possession. C. The Odumu festival in Okreka land involves the Ogwem masquerade that has both land and water components. The water masquerade dances floating on the water as the symbolic boa constrictor or python is stretched out on the water. The Odumu festival takes place once in 10 years. It is a very sacred festival to honor Adamu or Odumu. This is the Ofroma masquerade in Nembe. You see, they build almost like a shrine in the middle of the river. It tells you how powerful the masquerade is. This is the land-based Ogwe masquerade. This masquerade dances on the ground. This is the land component of the Ogwe masquerade. Here you have a water regatta and then the floating Ogwe masquerade. You see the masquerade on the water, very sacred. This is the Olorogun masquerade. Sometimes the carriers of the masquerade will be spiritually possessed. Seven, wrestling and spiritual capabilities. There are many instances to cite from. A. During the 1960s and 1970s, it was widely believed that Ogbia wrestlers had the power to ward off magical concussions intended to weaken and defeat them by rubbing certain leaves on their bodies. B. Equatorial wrestlers like Ogbia wrestlers had the capability to neutralize magical concussions intended to weaken and defeat them. C. In particular, there was a story that an Equatorial wrestling champion wrestled a one-breasted magical wrestler in Ghana. That was a very popular story in the 1970s, both in Lagos and also in Ijaw land. And 1. The person or being swore that the Ekpetiama wrestler would never be beaten in any wrestling match. There was also a one-armed Ekpetiama wrestler who was never defeated in any wrestling match, especially during wrestling matches against other ethnic groups. 8. Atudi. It was stated that during the past, the leopard and the crocodile avoided killing members of the community due to a spiritual pact between the community and the creatures. As a result, the leopard and the crocodile would always go away when a member of the community walks through the forest or swim in the river. However, if the spiritual rules were violated, especially in the river, the crocodile would float near the individual to alert the person about the violation of the rule. When that happens, the individual was expected to inform the family and take the necessary cleansing steps to avoid the crocodile floating around him or her again. Thus, the crocodile or the leopard would only harm a person if corrective measures were not taken after the warning signs have been given. During the Nigerian Civil War, a crocodile floated and roamed the river Atudi. A call was made advising those who had violated the rules to consult with their families and carry out the cleansing ritual. However, the belief was challenged by the Christians who shot the crocodile many times with a gun as it floated and dived back into the river. 9. There are also miraculous stories that in some parts of Ijaw land, there are some people who can dive and remain in the water for long without diving equipment due to a spiritual gift. Generally, it is believed that an Ijaw person does not die unnecessarily, except if the person has violated the sacred rules or committed sacrilege. In other words, throughout Ijaw land, there is a belief that Ijaw people do not die unnecessarily because they are protected by their ancestors, except if they've done something wrong. 10. It is often said that when the Ijaws pray intensely and pour libation to their deities, they often get response or approval through either thunderstorms and lightning or through a graceful light rainfall, even when the sun is shining. Sometimes the waves and or the currents will increase in the river. When that happens, the Ijaws will dance and pour more libation and pray the deities to be with them while they want to accomplish a certain goals. Now, let's try to find out why Ijaw is linked to water. Why are the Ijaws so attached to the water? 1. In terms of universal creation, it is believed that water existed before land came into being. In other words, before land, there was water. Thus, the forces of creation are linked to water. 2. The Ijaws like to settle in riverine locations because of their association with Adamu, Odumu, or Adamu, which in ancient Egypt was called Atum. Atum or Adamu was a highly revered god in ancient Egypt and was, and I quote from Benabe, the god of the primordial ocean, the soul of the deep watery abyss. And I unquote. Moreover, it seemed that they lived, that is, the Ijaws lived in a riverine topography while they were in the Egyptian Nubian region before moving down to the Niger Delta. In ancient times, the divine intelligence or supreme intelligence was conceptualized in the form of a spiraling motion symbolized by the snake. Hence, the name Adamu is associated with God. Since Adamu is regarded as the god of the primordial ocean, and the Ijaws were exponents of this deity, they brought the religion along with them to the Niger Delta. Hence, they are sensitized and socialized to embrace water. Thus, Adamu or Adum or Odum or Odumu, which is referred to as supreme intelligence, is referred to in Boni as Opu Adumu. Opu Adumu. It is the water connection to their deities, in addition to the fact that one of their major deities is the god of the water, perhaps prompts the Ijaws to strongly believe that if anyone comes to their land to commit evil, the individual shall not succeed and will be punished by the ancestral deities. There are those who believe that any person who comes to Ijaw land with magical concoctions to cause harm shall not succeed because the spiritual forces of the water will neutralize such magic. It is also the spiritual connection that made the Ijaws to warn their members from engaging in abominable acts, strongly believing that the spiritual energies will catch up with the person in karmic reaction. Now, let's look at the special spiritual temples in Ijaw land. The major spiritual temples or lodges in Ijaw land are Adamu, Egbesu, Opogola, Benikurukuru or Sokare, Zibarau. Note, as can be seen, these entities are connected to the supreme intelligence. Hence, the temples or lodges are very sacred. You can also refer to them as the national gods of the Ijaw nation. Apart from the major temples and lodges, the Ekine society too is very sacred and honored because of its connection to Ekeneba. The Ijaw culture is very spiritual, almost like that of Tibet and some parts of India and the ancient Inca. This is why it is often said that there is no secret in Ijaw land. Why? Because through divination, any secret can be revealed if the family or community wants to find out the absolute truth about any matter. Now, let's look at godly power versus magical power. Due to the sacredness of Orukari religion, the Ijaws are expected to be spiritually inclined at all times, like the Tibetans in Asia. In this regard, Ijaw people are advised not to engage in magical concoctions intended to cause harm to another person in any form or shape. Likewise, Ijaw people are advised to seek protection by invoking the ancestors, deities, and God through prayer and pouring of libation. It is strongly believed that by so doing, the person will receive godly protection against any harm coming from magic. Now, this is a priestess pouring libation and offering prayers in Baramatu. It is further believed that the invocation of the godly entities will result in protection as well as the neutralizing of any negative magical concussion intended to harm. However, to be able to invoke the ancestors, deities, and God, the individual must be spiritually clean or pure. In other words, any Ijaw person that has caused harm to another person cannot invoke the deities and God. If he or she does so, there might be a negative karmic reaction because an impure person cannot invoke Egbesu or Benikurukuru or Opogola or Adamu or Zibara. It is a sacrilege to invoke these godly entities while being in a state of sinfulness or impurity. And the Ijaws believe that godly power will always overwhelm magical power. Therefore, it is better to associate with godly power rather than magical concoctions. Conclusion: the Orukari religion is an ancient religion that is very sacred and spiritual in nature. It has well-established principles and processes. The spirituality of the religion greatly impacts Ijaw culture. This is why the Ijaws are expected to comply with the sacred commandments in order to be one with the supreme intelligence. Untruthfulness, hypocrisy, arrogance, impunity, greed, and unnecessary desire for the possession of material things, self-centeredness, and so forth are frowned upon in Ijaw culture. If an Ijaw person commits an abominable act, the person must confess and do atonement. There is no two way about it. Rather than throw away their religion and adopt a foreign religion that came into Ijaw land through conquest and colonization, the Ijaws can actually achieve a lot if they devote themselves to abiding by the spiritual rules of their culture, just as the ancient Egyptians achieved so much by relying on their religion. The Ijaws, like the Jews, cannot step outside the spiritual rules of their ethnic group. Like the Jews, Ijaw nationalism is a product of the Orukari religion. That is why when the Ijaws fight a war, the impossible becomes possible. The Ijaws tend to believe very strongly that they have a special power with God and the godly entities. As a result, it is further strongly believed that if an Ijaw person upholds the spiritual rules stringently, no harm can befallen the person anywhere he or she might be. On the other hand, if the Ijaw person violates the rules and does not confess and do atonement, then the person forfeits the protection of the deities. So, if you have Ijaw blood, be mindful of what you do. Ask your family and members of the community about the do's and don'ts of the culture. This is very important. Brother Benabe Benatare is very knowledgeable about Ijaw religious culture. Note, it must be noted that some Ijaw scholars discount the idea of the Ijaw connection with the Egyptian Nubian region. This was stated in the YouTube presentation titled The Sources of Ijaw Historical Origin. Thank you for listening to this presentation. Please subscribe to the channel and listen to other interesting presentations. Once again, thank you very much.